Hey everyone, Margarita here. I want to talk in this video today about how no one has ever questioned the sanity of my mother or ever even tried to reach out to me to verify the validity of all the bullshit that's been said about me over the past several decades. The entire false narrative, everything that's ever been said, none of it's ever been true. And not one person has ever even raised a red flag or attempted to reach out to me, or when they do cross paths with me in person, verify any of the information that's been going around about me. The whole thing is kind of ridiculous at the fact that all these hundreds, if not thousands, of people have never even thought to ask me if this is true or that is true about me. Everyone just assuming this deranged lunatic has some type of information on me or knows what she's talking about when there's never been a relationship from the time I was a small child. And there hasn't been any contact since 2002. And I guarantee she's never even told anybody that I cut all contact with her in 2002 when I bought my first home at 18 and walked in the opposite direction and started building my own life. So I find it really odd that not one of these agencies, not one of these people, whether she's known them long term or not, or she inserts herself in something and begins giving out false information about me and they've never spoken to her before, or whether they've known her for decades or years, or it doesn't matter. Not one person has ever tried to verify any of this false information with me. So I find that really odd that that's the situation. I'm sure part of that reason is because she's told people that I've always had a mental disorder and a drug problem. So they immediately believe it. Still, no questions asked, no questions about my actual life or anything I've ever had going on. Which, if you talk to me for 5 minutes, you would realize that my life speaks for itself, and what I have going on verifies that everything she's been saying are delusions. Um, so the way she talks to people long term, people she's known long term, and repeatedly places delusional phone calls with all this false information about me and growing the narrative over the course of all these decades, even if it's a shorter period of time for just several years or several months or several weeks, doesn't matter. Those people, they're not questioning this either. I mean, you can tell, especially long term, you can tell by the manner in which she's continuing to do this and grow this over time and the way in which she's delivering this information, that that should be a red flag. And she's coming off as disturbed, mentally disturbed, and no one's even questioned or raised a red flag or ever even asked for my phone number to verify any of this information, especially when the things she's saying has grown to the extreme degree where it is today, where some of the things she's saying are just so absurd and off the wall and so far from reality. Still, nobody's ever reached out to verify any of this information directly with me, and it's me that's being talked about, or perceived to have done this or that, or whatever the situation is. Still, nobody's ever even thought to reach out to me. Now, where we are today, you can Google my legal name and property records pop up. So that should be red flag number one. If you do that, then a picture of my house shows up on Google. So that should right there raise even more red flags that the false narrative about me is a complete false narrative. Because if you get that far, and that's not really doing much digging, it would prove that what's coming out of her mouth is not real. And because she's taken it so far as to say all these other people have been paying my bills, that doesn't add up either. Um, so, I mean, still, nobody's ever talked to me directly. Nobody's ever tried to reach out to me in any way, shape, or form, even if we just cross paths briefly, which has happened many times over the course of time. They still don't ever try to validate any of the information or verify anything. They just continue on. They don't even bring any of it up. They just continue operating and talking to me as if everything they had been told in the background is real, and don't even say anything to me. And then they start acting funny toward me and saying strange things. You can tell they're on a different page than the reality of my life. So, I mean, long term, when I'm talking about the how she's coming off disturbed and she's repeatedly placing phone calls to some of the same individuals, some of the same family members, friends, neighbors, coworkers, whoever she's talking to, the fact that this has gone on, the amount of time this has gone on for, that should still be a red flag, because everything out of her mouth is so absurd in the exact opposite of who I am as a person. And then when she's on the phone and she's saying all this stuff, and each time she's talking to whoever it is, the story grows and grows and grows on a negative note with all this false information, all these strange things. And then still at the root, still repeating she's always had custody of and raised my kids, which has never been real. It just doesn't add up. And no one's ever questioned her sanity, or has ever even reached out to me stating that they're questioning her sanity. Or, I mean, I know nobody's questioning her sanity, because this is all still going on today, and it's been allowed to get to where it is today. So that's a problem that all of these people and agencies, I mean, at this point, if you count the agencies, the people who work for them, and everybody that's been involved my entire life, because it's been going on my entire life. She started this from the time I was a very young child. And if you look back over the course of time, especially people who've known her that long, you can see that she had grown this from the time I was a child, because when this all started, I couldn't even talk yet, or nobody was getting their information directly from me, talking directly from me. And she continued to do that on and on and on and on for all these decades. But the fact that all these hundreds, if not thousands, it's got to be thousands at this point, because there's so many agencies and people, that nobody's ever even reached out to verify anything. They just continue on. When they do cross paths with me, if they do, they then operate on this false information. They act really strange or condescending, or they act like I'm the dumbest crayon in the box, or you can just tell by the way people operate and act toward me. And this has literally been going on my entire life with every person she's ever met, every person she's ever known. So I know part of the problem with this is two of the people that are closest to her are her sister Yolanda and her niece Rita. And those two have been two of the biggest flying monkeys helping carry out this false narrative about me. Even then, the two of them have never even questioned her sanity. And I even tried to say something several years back about what the problem was, and Yolanda did not want. She started saying condescending things to me, talking about all the good things my mother's done. Didn't want to believe anything I was saying about her. Not even. She wasn't even comprehending what the text even said. For her to spit out the answer she did, she's not even questioning whatsoever that everything she's been told about me, all these stories and all these things my mother has said all along the way, my entire life, were never real in the first place. She basically, we cut contact at that point. We never spoke again. Same with her daughter, Rita. So the two of them, because Rita, my cousin, is much older than me. She's like 7 or 8 years older than me. So they were able to get her to help grow this false narrative. Still, that was controlled from the time I was a young child. No one ever realized I cut contact at 18 with them as well. There was minimal times, a couple times ever, that I've crossed paths with them as an adult. Very few times over the course of all these years. So the two of them claim to have all this information about me, backing up the false narrative with all these additional family members as well, these hundreds of family members. And no one's aware that I didn't have a relationship with them either. I cut them off as well at age 18. So their information is still coming from the deranged lunatic feeding them the false narrative. However, everybody's believing all of these people. They all just have my name in their mouth, passing it all over town, passing it between all these hundreds of family members, and everybody operates on the false narrative, no questions asked. But the manner in which my mother sits there and so this is several years ago, before she got a cell phone a few years ago, because she didn't have one until a few years ago. She had an old school phone book, and she would sit there with her house phone and call all of these people by phone and report back to them on this false narrative and keep it all going. That's how she went about this. She would just keep it all going and occasionally call this person, occasionally call that person, keep it all going with all these hundreds of people all along the way. Or when she'd see them in person at this event or the other, same thing, she would just do it in person. But she did start by getting out her phone book and doing this repeatedly over the course of all these decades. Still, no one found that suspicious. that every time this woman is talking about her only child, that everything out of her mouth is on a negative note. And I'm just this hot mess and the opposite of who I really am as a person, and no one's ever questioned it. That doesn't make any sense. Either way you look at it, there's never been a relationship between us. And she's never told anybody that. She's never told anybody that we don't have a bond, we don't have a relationship. She's been doing this to me since I could talk. And that she doesn't have any facts about me. She doesn't know anything about my life. I literally cut all contact 23 years ago, back in 2002. I literally walked in the opposite direction and started building my life and cut everybody off and had nothing to do with any of them. From that point forward, she continued to grow the narrative even heavier, portraying herself to have raised and had custody of my kids all this time. Still, no one ever questioned it. And I know she never told anybody she was immediately cut out of my life. And that had to happen because of she had been doing this my entire life. I knew that by age 10. And so right at 18, I cut ties. I went the opposite direction. So it had been going on all along. Still, nobody's realizing. She never told anybody that there's never been any contact. There's no way for her to have any information on me, and she's never had custody or raised my kids. All she did was use my dad, because we maintained a separate relationship with my dad all these years, to make sure that she would send him to go get my kids if she had to go somewhere where there'd be an abundance of people where she was spinning this false narrative about me too. She would send my dad to pick up my two older kids, and present them with wherever they were going, or if they had a party or whatever at their house. She would send him to get them so they would be there, so it would appear as if she has custody of them and raised them and they live there. That was never real. It was all an illusion. She used my dad to pull off that illusion every step of the way. And then what my dad would do was tell me I need to show up, or I should show up, or this or that, or so-and-so wanted to see me. He was lying. He's really repeating whatever my mother had repeated to him over and over again. And then the words come out of his mouth, which I've seen happen many, many times over the course of my life. So it appeared to all these people that what she was telling them was real, when none of that was ever real. But the fact that she's just been able to spin this false narrative all this time, no one's ever questioned it. It just keeps on going. It's still going on today. No red flags ever went up to anybody, any of these family members. She's got hundreds of family members she's been doing this to. Nobody's ever questioned any of it. Not one person ever tried to talk to me directly. It's all false information. They come in contact with me. They start talking down to me. They start saying things that are irrelevant to the situation. And then I end up walking away. The contact is never for very long. And I figured this out over the course of time, because this kept happening. And I couldn't figure out why people were always on a different page than my reality. And it's not just these people. It's pretty much everyone she has ever called with these delusional phone calls to, and all the people she's ever paid to insert themselves into my life. Every single person. No one's ever asked any questions. No one's ever talked to me long enough to figure anything out. Or she pulls an illusion and tries to make it appear another way than what the actual reality of the situation is. And that's regarding many different situations over the course of time. And even those people will believe it without hesitation. There's not even a hesitation second within any of that. With all the large agencies and all those people who come to my house and harass me and whatnot, still the same thing. There's no questioning about the validity of the information they've received about me, or why they're acting toward me the way they do. It's all, the false narrative was already given to them, and here they are operating as if that's real, still not even questioning me on any of that. So it's just absolutely absurd how it's gotten to where it is today. You would think that somebody would have raised a red flag at some point, or confronted her that, hey, this isn't real, or that isn't real, or the way she sounds when she's repeating all this over and over again and growing it. And every time there's a conversation with her, it's something negative about me, which it's not even real in the first place. So part of the issue with this as well is when people hear from someone's mother, it's a label. She's labeled my mother because she gave birth to me. It doesn't mean that she raised me, we had a bond in a relationship, and she knows anything about me, especially when she's been cut off all these decades. People misconstrue that when you're hearing from someone's mother. So let's just say this is people she's known for a long time or family members. They just assume that she's correct on what she's saying, and that she knows this information and she's delivering this information, because in their minds they're thinking of their relationship with their own mother, and why would somebody's mother be lying about their child. And because they're assuming that she's not a deranged lunatic who's been lying all these decades, they just believe everything she's saying, and she's always delivered her information about me this way. And so people continue to believe her, just believing that there's a relationship and she knows all this stuff, when there's literally been no contact, no relationship all along the way. Even before I turned 18 and got my first house, there was still no relationship. There was still no bond. She was already spreading and growing the false narrative and the delusions and lies about me. So when people hear from her, they just automatically think of their own relationship with their mother. Whether this be people she's known long-term or short-term, doesn't matter. If they receive a phone call from the deranged lunatic, they immediately think of their own sweet, loving mother, or they believe that the mother has proper information just because she's using the word mother. And it's just not real. None of that stuff has ever been real. And that confuses people, because other people can't comprehend that I've been dealing with a deranged lunatic from the time I was born. What kind of mother has a baby and then is jealous of that baby from day one and every day going forward, and then tries to destroy that child's life, or that adult child's life who has no contact? That makes no sense. I was a newborn baby. I was a preemie baby, and I needed to be taken care of. And she was jealous that my dad was taking care of me, and she did not do any of that. It was him doing all the work. And so people just assume that she's correct with everything she's saying, not comprehending where this all stemmed from the time I was born. And she never wanted kids. So when they had this one kid, and this is why there's no other kids, she continued to act jealous all along the way, and my dad had to do all of the work. So no one's comprehending that that's what happened, and it grew to where it is today. This didn't just start today. It didn't start 10 years ago. It didn't start last week. It didn't start 20 years ago. It started from the minute I was born. So from day one, there was a problem. And all I was doing was trying to get fed and change. I don't know what I was doing at that age, but I'm sure that that's what I was doing. And then not ever knowing, because she always controls the flow of information, not really knowing what the problem is as well. And you got to think, I didn't have internet until it was probably 2007 or 8 before I even had internet. I already owned my second house by the time I had internet. And even then, it wasn't Wi-Fi. You had to plug it into your computer with a cord. So, back then, when as a child, I wasn't sitting there Googling stuff. Google didn't exist. There was no way to get information on like mental disorders and other people's experiences and real world experiences. There was no way to do that at that time. I got the majority of my experience from living my waking life in real life experience, and going out into the world is how I got my knowledge, which is a lot more knowledge than most people ever acquire in their lifetime, with where I am today with it all. So I didn't have a way to reach out to anyone, because I didn't have siblings. I didn't have anyone to turn to. She still controlled the flow of information between me and the family members that were closer. And there was no way for me to understand what I was actually dealing with, especially that young, especially being a toddler, or 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Still, there was no way to get information, and she controlled that the flow of information 100%. There was no other way for me to go about getting information. But I always knew something was wrong, something was not right, and it was not normal. I knew it. I don't know if I knew it wasn't normal. It didn't take me too long, because when I did try to say stuff to other people, they would always respond with, "Why would your mother do that?" Or, "Oh, your mother wouldn't do that." So that started at a very young age when I did try to tell somebody. And that's still going on today, because people are misconstruing the word mother with their relationship with their own mother, not the deranged lunatic I've been dealing with all along. So back then, there was no way to figure out what exactly the problem was or how abnormal this truly was. And it fully took, I mean, I knew there was a problem. That's why I cut ties at 18 in 2002. But it took until about 2013 when I fully realized this is way more extravagant than I initially thought. And that's exactly why my youngest is not allowed to have a relationship with her and has never had a relationship with her. He's not allowed near her. Plus the damage that she had already done to my older two kids as well. So the fallout of that is permanent. There's no way to reverse that type of damage with where it is today because it's gone on all along. There's still fallout and a problem with all that today. So there's no way to fix any of that. But in 2013 is when I seriously realized, okay, this is a lot worse than I initially thought. Still didn't really fully understand it, but I knew it was very extreme. And that's when I took further measures to remove those two older kids from being around her as much as, not that they were really around her, it was my dad that they were with the majority of the time, and it was in the evenings right before they were going to bed anyway. So, you know, I didn't really fully figure it out till my injury became extreme. Her actions became extremely heightened, and she took this escapade she's been on my entire life to a whole new level at that point. And that's when I figured out like this is very extravagant. There is something very seriously wrong. And I started digging deeper and deeper and gathering information from that point forward. That's basically what prompted me to start gathering the information to start making these videos and to figure out at the root of everything that had been going on as well. And at the same time, I had the brain injuries as a result of the carbon monoxide poisoning and the initial injuries. And that caused memories to come back that I wasn't aware I was missing. And part of that reason is because I was living in so much chaos and so much destruction with this extreme narcissist who was poisoning food and dealing with that all the time. There was all these issues with her all growing up. And then even when I cut ties, she created all these problems along the way. But when I had the injury, it caused these memories to come back in very clear view. So it allowed me to piece everything together from that point forward, I'd say in the past 7.5 years. But prior to that, I fully did not understand it. I was also working very hard. I was working about triple time what a regular person would prior to my injury, the 20 years prior. So I was always very occupied, very busy. My mind wasn't always, I wasn't ever sitting there thinking about any of this to that extreme degree, other than knowing in the back of my mind, yes, there's a serious issue with her, and I didn't really understand to what degree, but always knowing there's a problem, and didn't have the ability to sit there and dig into this and that and think about all. None of that even started until I became incapacitated, and then her behaviors during that time made everything come out even more. So the fact that nobody else has ever questioned any of this at any point during any of this, it doesn't make any sense why nobody's ever questioned any of this or why nobody's ever reached out directly to me and spoken directly to me, because I could have told you all along the way what the problem is. And she wanted to make sure, because I had been confronting her about her crimes as a very young child at age 3-4 years old, she had to make sure nobody would ever believe me or want to talk to me. So that's where the false narrative began. And that's got to be another red flag, because why would somebody be trying to silence their child in that manner, making sure nobody ever speaks to that child? And, you know, somebody's over here saying I'm this liar and been saying this for decades. And I'm not known to lie at all, ever. I'm not known to lie. I don't, I don't make stuff up. I don't have a reason to. And she had to do that in case I tried to tell anybody about what she was doing and the food that she poisons, and then along the way the other things she would do. So it grew. She just grew it, and that's how that came about. But there's just all these red flags that I see as red flags, and apparently nobody else does. And it doesn't take much thinking, much brain power to really take a step back and say, hey, why is this crazy old lady always talking all this shit about her adult child who's very successful and has been wiped out many times down to nothing? Because she's been lying to people about what I've been doing in my real life, what's all been going on, and that she has been behind the scenes destroying every step of the way. Everything I've been building, she wipes me out completely. It's happened 3 solid times and a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, all due to her crimes and harassment. And no one's aware of that. And even where I am today with what I've been through and the injury and the years I've lost and the amount of times I had to restart, I'm still ahead of everybody else in life. So that should still be another red flag that nobody's even looking at. But yeah, I mean, I know part of the problem is she seems very nice. That's a fake nice person. She's wearing a mask. That's not who she truly is. She puts on this false persona when she goes around other people, when she goes out in public. That's not who she truly is. It's never been. She's a different person behind closed doors, and she was always a completely different person to me. She just doesn't allow other people to see her act that way toward me. And she made sure she would never let anyone see her act that way toward me. She would always take me into the bathroom or do it so no one would ever see her act that way. So there'd be a lot of narcissistic abuse and a lot of reactive abuse situations along the way, because then she could, when we'd come out of wherever she had dragged me off to do this in private and there'd be other people around, then I'd come out and I'd be crying because I was a small child and again don't have resources or knowledge or anyone to turn to with what's actually going on. And then when I come out and I'm crying because she just gaslit me heavily and is causing reactive abuse situations, everyone seems to think that I'm the problem. And then she's lying to everyone, telling everyone I'm the problem. I have this mental disorder, or I'm this problem child, or I'm this liar, I'm this, I'm that. And everyone bought it. Everyone bought all the bullshit every step of the way. But I'm telling you right now, that fake nice person that she presents to the rest of the world is exactly that. It's fake. It's not a real person. That's not her real personality. And it's so controlled that nobody's ever seen the mask slip. So I find that very odd, that no one's ever seen this at any point during this. With me, I don't change my personality to be around other people. If I'm going to whoop my kid's ass, I'm going to do it in front of whoever. I don't really care. I'm not going to change my personality and drag them off in private. I'll do it right there in the grocery store. So I mean, there's a problem there because it was never seen her behaving this way toward anybody, or toward me in front of anybody. No one's ever seen the person that she truly is, and the fact that it's that controlled, that plays another role in why all these things that have gone on and these crimes she's participated in, why these are crimes and she belongs in prison and not in a mental hospital, because of how controlled it all is. That means she has full control over all of this. So it's not just a mental and personality disorder, or numerous of them. um, that shows the amount of control that's been had all along, every step of the way. The fact that nobody's ever seen this side of her but me, and or maybe my kids to some degree, or my dad. But my dad just perceives that as normal because they've been together since they were teenagers. So in his mind, he's not even seeing what the problem is. And I always knew that there was going to be, that he was just going to continue to take her side, or not that he was going against me, um, but there was definitely an issue, and I didn't really care if he, whatever side. I was basically going to walk in the opposite direction and leave him with his wife and build my own life, which is exactly what I did. But she has control over his mind. She always did. She definitely does now with where he is, where he's injured, how he's injured and he's at the facility. But she controlled his mind. And even though I tried to tell him numerous sets of times along the way, hey, your wife is crazy. Your wife is doing this and this and this and this. This is dangerous. This is what she's up to. He's even admitted some of these things that I've told him about, and just kind of sweeps it under the rug, and he's nonchalant about it and would carry on with his life. And I even told him about 6 years ago that she was going to end up killing him, and he just kind of brushed it off. Oh, she's not going to do that. And I'm like, okay, but you're not understanding to the degree of what her behavior is and what she's doing. And yes, she is, because I understand what she's doing, how she's carrying this out, by the time I confronted him with the bulk load of this information. And what I told him 6 years ago, what I said was going to happen in the future, has now happened and has now played out. And that's what's going on in the current day and how he became so injured. So, he was just not wanting to believe the situation was that extreme. And I didn't really care. I wasn't trying to fight over him with her at any point. I was never competing in the first place. I was just trying to live my life normally. And then anytime I try to bring it up to anybody else or another adult, they didn't want to believe reality, because now that I am where I am today, it's extremely abnormal for anyone to have this many severe mental and personality disorders with the amount of crimes she's committed. It's extremely rare for that to ever happen in that manner to that degree. So me reaching out to people, no one's comprehending it because they've never heard of such a thing. So I was never competing with her for his attention, and I literally just went my own way. I just was wanting things to be more normal as a minor, I guess you could say, trying to make things be more normalized where that wasn't happening because her actions were so extreme. Her disorders and her mental and personality disorders were that extreme that I was never going to get anywhere. It wasn't going to be any type of normal. And I'm still I wasn't trying to compete with her for him. I literally just walked in the opposite direction and said, yeah, screw that. I don't want anything to do with it. You can keep her. Go live your lives together. I'm out of here. Like, that's where my mind was at. And then I never thought twice how serious the situation was until my life was in shambles from her escapades in 2013, and then even more heavily in 2018. So that's where it fully began to be figured out. And I do believe that's, that's why she's been telling people my dad's always paid my bills, given me money, this, that, and the other thing. Other people pay my bills. No, that's her life. That's what people have done for her. That's what my dad did for her. So no, that's never been my reality. I've literally paid all my own bills, and she wanted to project that onto me because she wants that to be my situation, and that way she feels justified in going against me and like saying these things about me and doing all these things towards me, just wanting to believe that my dad pays all my bills and it's this competition, when that was never the case. But yet she went on telling people all that for decades. So I mean, there's many problems here when it comes to all this. Nobody ever questioning any of this. Everyone just believing this whole false narrative, or that my ex paid all my bills and paid for my house, bought my house. Well, if you knew anything about me and talked to me for 5-10 minutes, you'd realize everything I own is mine individually. And this is what I've been building all along for decades. And not only that, where I am today, I've already been wiped out 3 times in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. I still built everything myself every step of the way. So you would realize nobody's ever paid for anything for me, and I've built everything by myself, paid for everything by myself, and never got any money from my dad, or my ex, or whatever. It wasn't anybody's work but my own. But she can't handle that. She can't handle that I'm as successful as I am, that I am the person that I am, because she's been portraying to the rest of the world the exact opposite. And there's just all these problems in the current day because nobody's ever questioned the validity of all the information she's been spreading around town about me. So all these red flags, if you take a step back and just look at all your conversations with her over the course of the time you've known this crazy lady, you would know there would be red flags going off. Now that I've said what I said, if you watch the video, there'll be more than enough red flags on what I've mentioned in this video in your conversations with her over the course of the time that you've known her. But yeah, she's a fake nice person. That's not a real personality. And I have contacted numerous mobile mental health units trying to explain to them how serious this is. And the results of her actions are catastrophic. And this has happened numerous times. And because she has so much control over the false personality and the mental disorder and what's all going on, they won't even help, because they want somebody to be in like extreme meltdown type of state when that's not the disorder. She is extremely dangerous to many lives. There's many lives. But when I'm trying to explain this to them and what they're used to dealing with, it's not on that type of end. That's not how she operates. She still is a danger to people's lives, especially mine and my dad's. But I wasn't able to get anywhere with any of those people, even at the most extreme points of what has gone on, especially in the most recent couple of years since my dad's been injured. Same with the care facility. I talked to them before he ever even came there. I notified them in advance what she was going to do, how she was going to act, what she was going to pull. And then they saw me there almost every night for about 15 months. And somehow she still managed to manipulate them onto her team, manipulate them into committing crimes against me, banning me on a bunch of false information. Well, she's the one committing the crimes and I can prove it, which I already have in the videos I've released. and still managed to slowly manipulate them over onto her team to get me banned from him permanently. And at the root of that is the long-term jealousy and envy, jealous of the relationship between my dad and I, and my kids and I both. So I'll do a separate episode on all of that because none of that is normal. But the point being, the care facility was able to be manipulated as well. Everybody that worked there. And here they saw me by myself without her around because I'd be there in the evening, she'd be there during the day. Well, that's where the majority of the staff is. So then she'd be flapping her jaw to all these people, and she slowly got them to believe her false narrative about me. And still, not one of them ever talked to me directly and verified any of this information, just wholeheartedly believing her because she's the mother. So that's a huge that these are all red flags, everything that's gone on, and the fact that I'm still banned from him, and it's really due to all of the decades of jealousy and envy, what I look like, what I've built, what I have, how I'm able to rebuild after each wipeout, what she's all caused every step of the way. These are serious issues. But yeah, so people who are viewing this who know her, and you're still believing the false narrative, and then you're listening to what I'm saying, take a step back in your own mind and look at what's gone on over the course of time, and how everything I've said, everything out of her own mouth, has been nothing but negative information about me to grow this false narrative, to make it all look real, when, well, if you know the real me, then you'll Google my name, and the first thing you're going to see is a picture of my house that pops up on Google with property records, and it just doesn't fit the false narrative at all. I've lived here for 8 years, and my ex had been moved out of my house 5 years ago, been moved out, doesn't pay child support, there's no exchange of money, nothing. My dad's never paid my bills, and this is my third house, and I bought another one after this with cash. So all along the way, that's always been my situation. If you're Googling my name, that's what you're going to find. But the fact that no one's ever questioned any of this, and they continue to operate on her behalf like I've done something wrong, when 100% of the things she's been saying out of her mouth are all 100% delusions. And she does need to be apprehended immediately. But because of the extreme nature of the control of the false narrative, and the catastrophic events she's caused, and how she has so many people and agencies believing all this and operating on her team as if all that's real, it's going to be very hard to get her apprehended, especially with the manipulation and the lies and delusions to all these police departments, and all the corruption, and all these high-level officials involved with all of this. There's no way for me to report her crimes properly. I'm having numerous problems with reporting it because of how large scale it all is, how long term it all is. That's one separate problem. And then with the local police departments participating in the crimes with her, it's an additional problem. So somebody needs to step in and help get this matter situated before anything else happens and I lose anything further, because I am the direct target. And at the very root of all this is her deep-rooted jealousy and envy towards me from the time I was born, and still just not wanting to believe that I am the person that I am. So yes, at the root also is the stolen trust fund, which was left for me a couple years after I had confronted her about poisoning the batches of food. That just topped it all off. She became even more jealous and envious from that day forward. She was all ready, and then that made it even worse. So from day one, she never had any intention of giving it to me. I do remember her reaction when my name was called at the funeral when all this happened. I do remember being there. She never had any intention of giving it to me or notifying me from day one, from all those decades ago, which is why she began growing the false narrative from that point forward, so she could carry out the plans of making sure it was turned over to her. So I do need help from family and friends who do know her with all of this. There's no way to get it situated. I am exploring numerous avenues with numerous different types of people and agencies to try to help me get this under control. I just don't know how long it's going to be or how much each person can actually help, because this is all very abnormal. There is no other case like this in history. So I guess the only two cases that even come somewhat close to this, which these aren't even on the same level as what I'm dealing with, mine's much more extravagant, would be Gypsy Rose or Eminem's mom. And this is much more extravagant than all of that. So it's going to be really hard to get this under control with the amount of officials and police officers and such who are involved in the crimes as well. And I have already released the videos of the proof of a lot of that already. I do have more. I have quite a bit more I have not released yet, and I am getting there. So stay tuned for more. I'll be back with another one. Thanks. Bye.